Imagine a world where fate weaves the most incredible stories, where the paths of strangers cross, leading to friendships that defy logic and expectations. This is the story of Curious Chris, Chef Charmer, and Adventure Adam. A tale of dreams, determination, and the power of unlikely bonds. From rural Australia to the bustling streets of Japan, their journey will leave you breathless, wondering at the mysteries of life and the magic of friendship. So, get this, my friend told me this wild story that sounds straight out of a movie. Picture this. A 10-year-old kid in rural Australia suddenly decides he wants to learn Japanese. Not French, not Spanish, but Japanese. The odds, slim to none. But hey, his mom goes along with it and somehow finds the only Japanese person in town to teach him. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, there's this guy in rural Japan, determined to move to Australia despite flunking all his English classes. Fast forward a bit, the kid ends up in Sydney alone at 17, struggling to keep up his Japanese skills. Meanwhile, the guy from Japan is job hunting in Cairns, failing miserably. After 48 rejections, he moves to Sydney. Here's where it gets crazy. The kid, now a teenager, walks into a Japanese restaurant looking for a job, not expecting much. The guy who greets him there, turns out, he's the one who fought tooth and nail to get the kid hired. Long story short, they end up living together, acing exams, and traveling the world. Fate? Coincidence? Who knows, but it's one heck of a story. The unlikely beginning. Alright, picture this. A small town in rural Australia, where the most exotic thing around is probably a kangaroo hopping by. Now, in this town lived a 10-year-old kid named, well, let's just call him Curious Chris. One day, out of the blue, Curious Chris decides he wants to learn Japanese. Not French, not Spanish, Japanese. His mom, bless her heart, is like, sure, I'll find you a Japanese teacher in our little Aussie town where finding a sushi restaurant is a miracle. Miraculously, through some newspaper ad or divine intervention, they actually find the only Japanese person in town who agrees to teach Curious Chris. And just like that, a Japanophile is born. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, in rural Japan, there's this dude we'll call Adventure Adam. Adventure Adam has a dream. He wants to move to Australia. Why? Because, well, why not? He's not exactly acing his English classes, but hey, he's determined. Fast forward a bit, Curious Chris is now a bit older, and after a year of learning Japanese, he's hooked. He decides he needs to be where the real Japanese action is, Sydney. So, at the ripe old age of 17, he packs his bags and heads off to the big city, all by himself. Talk about a brave move for a kid from a small town where everyone knows everyone else's business. Meanwhile, Adventure Adam is in Japan, plotting his escape to the land down under. He's told his parents, as soon as I finish school, I'm outta here. Now, in Japan, only the brainiacs and intellectuals get to move overseas. Adventure Adam. Let's just say he slept through most of his English classes. His teachers are like, dude, you're dreaming. But does he care? Nope. He works his butt off, saves up enough cash, and boom, he's off to Cairns, Australia, the day he graduates. So, there you have it. Two dreamers, one from rural Australia and the other from rural Japan, both with a crazy plan to live on the other side of the world. How's that for an unlikely beginning? Paths converging. Now, let's zoom in a bit. Curious Chris is in Sydney, living the big city life, but feeling a bit lonely. He's surrounded by kids from well-off families, and his Japanese skills are slipping because, well, there aren't many Japanese kids around to talk to. He's starting to wonder if this whole move was a mistake. Meanwhile, Adventure Adam is in Cairns, a tiny town where the most exciting thing is probably the occasional kangaroo hopping by. Wait, wrong town. He's on a job hunt, but after 48 rejections, it's clear there's not much work for a fresh high school grad whose English skills are, let's say, a work in progress. Someone suggests he try his luck in Sydney, and reluctantly, he agrees. Back in Sydney, Curious Chris is just going about his business when he spots a sign in a window. Staff wanted, in Japanese. Now, remember, he's not exactly looking for a job, but something pushes him to check it out. He walks into this tiny Japanese restaurant, and the guy who greets him is not only nice but also pretty easy on the eyes. They chat, Curious Chris leaves his details, and that's that. Or so he thinks. Weeks go by, and he doesn't hear anything. He's all but forgotten about the job when out of the blue, he gets a call for an interview. Turns out, the guy he spoke to at the restaurant had been bugging the owner for weeks to hire him. In his short time there, he'd already made a name for himself as the best up-and-coming chef. Talk about fate, right? So, Curious Chris starts working at the restaurant, and lo and behold, within 2 weeks, he's living with the guy who got him the job. This guy, let's call him Chef Charmer, makes the best school lunches ever, and suddenly, Curious Chris is hacking his exams and getting into the best law school in the country. All thanks to a chance encounter at a Japanese restaurant. As for Adventure Adam, well, he's in Sydney now, too, and let's just say things aren't going so great on the job front. But hey, who knows what the future holds? Maybe his path will cross with Curious Chris's, and they'll both realize they're on the brink of something amazing. But hey, that's a story for another chapter. A twist of fate. Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. Curious Chris and Chef Charmer are living together. Life is good, and they're both happy as clams. But remember Adventure Adam? Yeah, he's still in Sydney, trying to make ends meet. One day, Curious Chris is flipping through his old diary and comes across an entry about the guy from the restaurant, the one who got him the job. He realizes he never got the chance to thank him properly for changing his life. So, he decides to track him down. After a bit of sleuthing, he finds out that Chef Charmer is now working at a different restaurant across town. Curious Chris goes to visit him, and Chef Charmer is thrilled to see him. They catch up, reminisce about old times, and Chef Charmer invites Curious Chris to join him for dinner that night. Little do they know, this dinner will change everything. As they're chatting over dinner, Chef Charmer mentions that he's been thinking about opening his own restaurant someday. Curious Chris, being the supportive friend he is, tells him he should go for it. And just like that, a seed is planted. Meanwhile, Adventure Adam is still struggling to find work. He's been through countless interviews, but nothing seems to be panning out. One day, he's walking down the street when he sees a sign in a window, "Help Wanted." It's for a position at a restaurant. The same restaurant where Curious Chris and Chef Charmer are having dinner. Adventure Adam walks in, and Chef Charmer, who happens to be the owner, interviews him on the spot. He's impressed by Adventure Adam's determination and work ethic, and before long, Adventure Adam is hired as a waiter. Now, here's the kicker. As Adventure Adam is being shown around the restaurant on his first day, he spots Curious Chris sitting at a table. They lock eyes, and there's a moment of recognition. They start talking, and it turns out they have a lot in common. They both love Japanese culture, they both have dreams of living abroad, and they both have a friend named Chef Charmer. Before they know it, they're fast friends, and Adventure Adam is invited to join Curious Chris and Chef Charmer for dinner that night. As they sit around the table, chatting and laughing, they can't help but feel like their meeting was meant to be. It's a twist of fate that brings them together, and little do they know, it's just the beginning of an incredible journey. Against all odds. So, here we are, at the final part of this incredible story. Curious Chris, Chef Charmer, and Adventure Adam are now inseparable. They spend all their free time together, sharing stories, dreams, and ambitions. Chef Charmer is busy planning his own restaurant, and Curious Chris and Adventure Adam are right by his side, offering support and encouragement. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months, their bond grows stronger. They become like family, supporting each other through thick and thin. And then, one day, Chef Charmer's dream becomes a reality. He opens his own restaurant. It's a huge success, thanks in no small part to the hard work and dedication of Curious Chris and Adventure Adam. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and just when everything seems to be going perfectly, a new challenge arises. Chef Charmer is offered an incredible opportunity to open a restaurant in Japan. It's a dream come true for him, but it means leaving behind everything and everyone he loves in Australia. Curious Chris and Adventure Adam are devastated at the thought of losing their friend, but they know they have to support him in his decision. So, they help him pack up his things, say their goodbyes, and watch as he boards a plane to Japan. For Curious Chris and Adventure Adam, life goes on. They continue to work at the restaurant, building their own dreams and making plans for the future. And then, one day, Adventure Adam drops a bombshell. He's decided to move back to Japan. Curious Chris is stunned. He never expected this turn of events, but he knows he can't stand in the way of Adventure Adam's dreams. So, with a heavy heart, he says goodbye to his friend and watches as Adventure Adam boards a plane to Japan, just like Chef Charmer did months before. But this isn't the end of their story. No, it's just the beginning of a new chapter. As Curious Chris watches his two friends embark on their own adventures in Japan, he realizes that sometimes life takes us on unexpected journeys, but if we're lucky, we find friends who make the journey worthwhile. And so, Curious Chris continues on his own path, grateful for the experiences he's had, the lessons he's learned, and the friends he's made along the way. Against all odds, their paths crossed, and their lives were forever changed. It's a story of friendship, of love, and of the incredible power of fate to bring people together, no matter where they may be in the world. In a shocking twist, fate wasn't done playing its hand. As Curious Chris continued his journey, he stumbled upon a hidden talent for cooking, rivaling even Chef Charmer's skills. With Adventure Adam by his side, they opened a restaurant that became the talk of the town. But here's the kicker: Chef Charmer, now a successful restaurateur in Japan, heard about their success and decided to return to Australia to join forces. Together, the trio created a culinary empire, revolutionizing the food scene with their unique blend of Japanese and Australian flavors. Their story became legend, proving that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings lead to the most extraordinary endings. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Don't forget to subscribe for more crazy adventures. Goodbye, and may your days be filled with kangaroos, sushi, and endless friendship.